Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of the City of Port Richey this 24th day of June, the year 2014. If we all rise for the invocation with Pastor Ganaway, please.
Good evening. Let's pray. Father, we do thank you for the council meeting tonight. We pray for wisdom, God, as they make decisions, God, for the city, Father, and we ask you to continue to bless this city, prosper it, and we give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Eloise Taylor.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bill Colombo.
Here.
Councilman Steve O'Neill.
Here.
Councilwoman Nancy Britton.
Here.
Councilman Terrence Rowe.
Here.
City Attorney Joseph Public.
Here.
And City Manager Tom O'Neill.
Here.
All right, the first item is the approval of City Council minutes, the regular City Council meeting of June 10th, 2014. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any additions, corrections, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, it passes. Next, announcements. Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out that we're meeting tonight. Our next meeting will be after July 4. The staff is actively underway with trying to plan for the event. We have discussed mutual assistance from both Dade City and the City of Newport Richey with law enforcement presence out in the waterfront district. And you recall the showing that we got last year. It was extremely busy and it rained, and we're trying to plan for an event that draws thousands of people. And so I'm looking forward to a good event. We're spending a lot of time, and I will be sending you out action plan like I did last year so that you're aware of the road closures and all of the specifics with the staff planning.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Public.
No announcements this evening.
Any comments from the public? Mr. Brown, come on up.
Thomas Brown, Candlelight Court. I have about 20 incidents of city employees ignoring City Ordinance 05536 or abusing power given to them by the City Council or being ignorant of certain parts of certain ordinances or using stalling tactics in hope my legitimate complaints will go away. Or of the City Council doing nothing to settle my complaints, and of a certain city employee just plain not telling me and someone that I enlisted for help the truth. I will address one of my 447 Candlelight Court to do an inspection. He was there to see that the fence met code. There is no waiver provision in city ordinances for the material a fence is to be constructed of when it obstructs the view of the waterway by adjacent property owners. It shall be chain link or decorative wrought iron, as Part F2 says it shall be. It was not. Please keep in mind that shall, according to the dictionary, is a command, and no one should interpret it to mean that it is a suggestion. The words shall and shall not will be brought to your attention at several future meetings. Mr. Goldberg wrote on his city inspection sheet, does not block view of adjacent. I wrote him saying, you are right, the fence does not block my view of the waterway. I can still see some of the waterway. However, the city ordinance does not address blocking the view, it addresses obstructing the view. To block the view would mean to do something that would not make it possible to see the item to be viewed. To obstruct the view would be to do something that would limit the ability to see the item to be viewed. Mr. Goldberg went on to state in writing, provides security for pool. The city ordinance that deals with pool enclosures says that you must have a screened enclosure with locking doors or a fence around the pool, not both. The residence at 7447 has a very sturdy screen enclosure with locking doors. Pool security cannot be used as a justification for erecting this 6-foot-tall fence where city ordinance says in section F2, no fence shall be erected at a height greater than 4 feet from the waterfront property line to the nearest building line. The fence in question runs from the waterfront property line to the nearest building line. Mr. Goldberg wrote me stating, I see no reason to contact you any further in regards to the fence at the above address. The fence will remain as long as the property owner wishes to keep it. Apparently, we simply disagree in the application of these ordinances in this particular instance. I interpret 4 feet to mean 48 inches. Mr. Goldberg does not. I interpret no fence shall be to mean no fence will be allowed to be. Mr. Goldberg does not. I interpret shall be constructed with to mean you may construct the fence only with the materials listed in the ordinance. Mr. Goldberg does not.
Thank you, Mr.
What's going to
Brown.
be done about this fence? This goes on and on.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anyone else from the public? All right. Any comments from council?
Mayor, I brought this up last meeting, and I asked for a written statement from the city as to its position on this fence, and I have not yet seen that. I think it would help us a lot if we had a written statement,
Okay.
because there are some questions on the ordinances and where we stand on this.
Where does that stand, Mr. O'Neill?
I have done that previously on 2 separate occasions. I'll be happy to furnish each member of council that again. I've done it by email, a detailed explanation, interpretation of the code, interpretation of the issues involved. Additionally, I want to point out that the city attorney and I have had some lengthy discussions on this. We all agree on the interpretation of the code, and I'll be happy to furnish a report I gave to each member of council again.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got a couple too.
Go ahead.
Anybody else? No, okay, I'll go. The memo that we received in regards to the water resources reform, this was the Obama signature on the Water Resources Reform and Development Act. This allowed or identifies $12 billion worth of new water infrastructure projects. This comes at a time where many areas in the country are desperate, as we are, for some infrastructure repairs. I did note that some of these are also harbor projects and inlet projects as well. And I don't know this for fact, but I'm guessing that part of the dollars that we would be looking into for some of what we have in our waterways may be directed towards some of this $12 billion that is obviously available or being made available. We also received some information on an automated revenue system that would be something in regards to parking. I don't know if we'll be able to have more conversation on this or if the city manager wants to update us at all. We've been looking at this for quite some time, and you know, I would like to get discussions going in that direction and how we look forward. The grinding operation costs were noted to be approximately $10,000 a year. Pat may be familiar with this. I just wondered, you know, with those particular costs, as we've seen with others, like we had the Vector truck, over a period of years, we didn't, and obviously that was a purchase that we needed to make. But, you know, $10K a year is $10K a year. Is it possible to reduce, and by how much? I see a lot of piles around the city and all that. The city response to the Auditor General is noted. I would guess there's still action going forward on that, since there were a few components that were discussed, and the action going forward in relation to the $785,000 that we currently use. I won't say too much more on that. It's outlined in the letter that we received, but I'm certain that's not done yet. Obviously, that's something that they're still going through. I don't know if we've received, and I don't know if the chief would be prepared to give us any answers on this. I know that we are looking at the police overtime expenses in regards to a memo. There are some obvious changes coming forward in part-time to full-time that would therefore allow for increased coverage, a clarification in the chain of command, and also this would control basically some of those overtime costs. So certainly doesn't have to be now. I'm not calling you out on the carpet, but you know, we may have something in the future that goes along with that. I mean, at a time that we're looking at, you know, reduced traffic citations, et cetera, you know, we know this is our biggest bill for the city is our police. The Florida Supreme Court and the red light traffic fines, recently some information came down on that. I don't know the status of, but this is something obviously that we're, you know, keeping up to date with. I'd also wondered, has there been any requests for the $5,000, any dollars of the $5,000 that we set aside grant money for the irrigation? Has anybody initiated anything in that?
Not yet, but
Okay.
we have an interested party,
Okay.
and so we're waiting on their application.
Okay. I just also want to say, Mr. Lee, I did get your letter. I did read it. I thank you for your comments. I read everything that comes my way, always have. You bring some good points, and I think part of that may come in the item that we have for discussion tonight. So I believe you sent that letter to everybody, is that right? Okay, so everybody got the letter, obviously read it, and there's some information in there. So that's all I have. I don't know if anybody wants to address anything that I laid out there, but
Nancy?
anyway.
No, I'm excited about going forward with, have we heard anything more about, you know, where we're headed as far as the new Port Richey Police and doing any community policing at this point?
I have not heard anything yet. I will inquire tomorrow of the police chief in Newport Richey. We've had several discussions, as you're aware, and I know that they were trying to enlist the support and activity of the sheriff's department.
Right, that was the last we had heard. I don't know if Pastor Eugene has heard any more, but if you have, sir, you may want to comment on that.
I'll just add lastly, too, I agree with Terry that something written in response to the fence. I'm sure Mr. Brown's aware there was a fence that started to go up around my neck of the woods. It did come down. And I have been sitting here for quite some time. I remember years back there were other discussions about fences. As a matter of fact, one that became pretty intense that occurred on the waterfront. This is some years back. But, you know, I understand no situation is the same. I just hope that as we've gone along and we know this to be a sensitive issue, I know just recently there's another example of a smaller fence that did go up that does not meet the 50% see-through with the water at this particular location, and I understand there's some special circumstances there as well. So I think a written statement, you know, in regards to the fence, and I know what you've already sent, but obviously this, as this gentleman's indicated, it does go on and on. It's obvious that, you know, this isn't coming down, and it doesn't look to be resolved on either side, and there's just no happy medium, unfortunately. But I would just agree that there have been, and this is a sensitive issue. I know we have to be very careful in going forward with fences in our city.
Okay, on the issue you raised on the automated collection of the kiosks, I've asked Mr. O'Neill to collect some further information as to maybe less expensive alternatives. Do you want to set this on a city council meeting for further discussion, or the CRA?
You know, that's a good point, because we had some other revenue ideas that were tied in to that as well. Would that then fit maybe on the CRA?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
When is our next CRA?
We don't have one scheduled at this point, but we certainly could schedule it at the next city council meeting, unless you decide you want to hold another CRA meeting, which we could do. The Nix Park facility has been a city amenity since 1920, when it was dedicated by the Nix family, and so you're well poised to act on anything you want to do as a city council too.
What do we think, in the CRA or general? I kind of like the CRA, but
I'm not sure. I mean, you know, since this is essentially looking to be a revenue enhancer for the city, that it shouldn't be on a city agenda as opposed to a CRA agenda. It's not. That's not necessarily an improvement to a park. This is a revenue item. So, you know, if we did it through the CRA, it would be going to city revenue anyway. So,
We would meet normally in a regular meeting 2 weeks from tonight. So we could list it then.
yeah,
Okay.
that'd
That's
be
fine.
fine.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, anything else from anybody?
and those would be the other revenue things that you would discuss too. That would be on there. I know we had lights. We had there were
Yeah.
a couple. I'd have to look back. I know
That's
there were a couple
at the
other
pleasure of
things
the
on
council.
there. Okay, I'd like to.
Those prices for those collection, money collectors, or whatever they are called, are awfully high. That's just,
Well, we're looking at some less expensive alternatives. The county has a number of different installations. Today, I talked with a vendor for a less expensive alternative, and I'll have more information on that at the next meeting.
okay.
All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, information? All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. Capital projects review and discussion. Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Tonight on the agenda, we have a review and discussion of our ongoing capital projects. I've listed for your review the capital projects that are in the City Public Works budget, which a portion is funded by the CRA. I want to go over this presentation. I don't intend to be very lengthy with the presentation, and if you have any questions or you decide you want to talk about anything else, this certainly is a format to do that with regard to the city's projects. Just beginning, you know, these are capital projects which are planned in the city's capital improvement program. We have 4 city public works projects under discussion and or design development at this particular point in time. Okay, the first project that I have listed on the presentation is the Queener Avenue lift station. It's a complete rehabilitation of this particular lift station, which is located on the eastern section of Queener Avenue. We included as a portion of the design documents and plan construction to increase the slab elevation. It is susceptible to flooding at this time. Also rehabilitation of the wet well, new pumps, and mounting bases, discharge piping and so forth, elimination of the existing valves and replacement of them, and also installation of new electrical controls at the station which are beyond their serviceable life. There's the lift station. It's a work of art and susceptible to flooding. This particular area receives a lot of stormwater runoff off Queener Avenue and the other areas nearby, and what happens is the water rises above the wet well and the valve pit and causes additional infiltration into the system. that will rise and prohibit that type of situation from occurring, which will save us in the long term, both on pumping costs and wastewater treatment costs that now are directed to the city of New Port Richey. The current status of the project is we have awarded a bid, as you will recall. We recently held a pre-construction meeting, which is a meeting where we invite all of the affected utilities. The contractor appeared at this meeting and informed us that they've ordered the appurtenances and materials. They have submitted shop drawings for a certain design change, which the city will be involved in, and the engineer. The contractor has committed to begin the work within the next 60 days after the materials are received. The funding sources, we wanted to identify the funding sources for each of these projects. The total project cost and bid award is $143,847 and some odd cents. The city is going to fund this project for the most part by accumulated community development block grant funding. That amounts to some $125,112. So most of the project will be paid for with CDBG funding. The remainder of the project cost is $18,735.07, and that funding will be taken from the city's water and sewer utility fund. The next project in the presentation is the planned water main upgrades. These upgrades are under design at this time. We expect that design to be concluded and permitted within the next 60 days. The project is planned to replace the transite or asbestos concrete water main in the Harbor Isle subdivision, and they will be sized for adequate fire protection. New hydrants will be placed to enhance the existing fire protection out in the area. And I wanted to point out too that now projects like this typically are using directional drilling so that there is a minimum of disruption and restoration that is required from typical trench installation of piping. These are pipes that will be put in by directional drilling, so the restoration requirements will be minimal. This is a map, and this is all included in your packet, which also this packet is available to any member of the public if they desire to have one. We could furnish one at their request. This is the Harbor Isle subdivision right here, and it shows the area where the new piping is anticipated to be installed. C&D Engineering is the project engineer, and you can see their work, which you've already reviewed at the council level. And like I mentioned earlier, it's currently underway with design, and we expect that design and construction document preparation to be concluded within the next 60 days. This project is estimated at $160,000. We do not have bids yet on this project, and nor do we have an engineer's estimate, so that figure could change. I wanted to point out too that this project is using water and sewer utility impact fees that have been collected in previous years, so it is being funded out of the city's water and sewer enterprise fund. The next project that we've listed here is our street improvement project, and the streets which you've recently gone over are listed here, and all of these streets are in poor condition and beyond their serviceable life, and we're currently underway with geotechnical investigations to determine what base reconstruction may be needed in certain areas. You may have seen PSI out. They are conducting the core borings and doing the geotechnical investigation work. There is a map of the project locations. They're in various areas of the city and listed along with their links on this particular map. Florida Design Consultants is our engineering firm on this project, and as I mentioned at a previous meeting, in each of these project areas we also will look at the existing drainage to make sure that we don't exacerbate any drainage problems that may exist out in the field. The engineer's work is design, which will take into consideration the geotechnical investigations and any other items that we bring to their attention. There are areas where there will be cut and patch, where there's been some base deterioration, and you'll see that out in the field when the project takes place. This is just a picture of the work that took place later last year with the Marina Palm subdivision, but it just shows for benefit of the public and members of council that didn't get an opportunity to see this underway, what it looks like when we contract out and pave a street. In my opinion, this is a highly visible public improvement that benefits a neighborhood, benefits the appearance of the neighborhood, and shows the city tax dollars at work. For those of you that even recently may have driven through the subdivision, it has dramatically improved the appearance. The area of public right-of-way was in very poor condition and showed considerable deterioration before we did this project late last year. I wanted to also mention that both with the street improvements that are planned and the water main upgrades, the design is occurring at the same time, and I expect that we will bid these projects in probably September, and construction could be anticipated to be completed by the end of this year. I want to see these projects get completed so that we can move on to other areas and do the improvements that are required. Another project that we have recently included on our list is an extension of the hike and bike trail to the south along Old Post Road. I've recently had discussions with Gildog to examine the possibility of connecting to their existing boardwalk. This sidewalk and extension of the trail could be modified or further extended in the future. We will need an easement, and I've had discussions with Mr. Soyanen on what he would think would be a typical required connection to his existing boardwalk, how that would occur, and he is willing and encourages us with regard to this, and is willing certainly to grant an easement to the city to make the physical connection. And this would essentially complete pedestrian access to the waterfront district through the Gildog property. At this time, I'm anticipating that in the future we would further extend this and possibly look at a sidewalk extension or sidewalk construction through the waterfront overlay district. We've estimated this project at $30,000, and we have included funding for sidewalk construction in the CRA budget. And what I'm anticipating here is that we recently filled a position in Public Works, and what I would like to see us do is build this project ourselves. It's not a huge undertaking, although it might take a while with the existing Public Works employees to build this, but it's easier to get small projects like this done if we can do them in-house. And when we make a layout on this project, I'd like to bring it back to you and make sure that you approve of the route. I'm envisioning that this area, I'm going to go backwards. This is the area here looking south from about the lift station area in front of the waterfront park. And I'm thinking that probably the best way to construct this sidewalk, because we've got some trees in the way, it would be to loop back and through the trees that are on the waterfront property, making it a scenic walk and ultimately a connection into Gildog. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks. Any questions or comments or any other matters or projects that you would desire to talk about, certainly I'll help with any answers or answers to questions.
Discussion.
Just one question. You had talked at a previous meeting about contacting the county administration to see about Orange Grove, that shared project that got shot down. Have you had any contact with them on that?
Yes, I've discussed this with the county administrator, and as of this point, she has indicated that they're not going to be in a position to proceed with that. I certainly was disappointed with that. I'd like to see that project be undertaken, and I know that there's widespread desire for this improvement in Candlelight. I'd like to see it for benefit of those residents, and the county administrator has indicated that if we are going to proceed with this, that they would ask the city to consider special assessments on the Candlelight residents. I'm not so sure that I agree with that at all.
Just a quick point, if I may, as far as the Candlelight entranceway. If they're not going to do anything, then can they go out and do some repair work on it? I mean, you know, it shouldn't be left in this, the way it looks now.
I will certainly pursue that. I want to let you know that if we've looked at that road and seen where there is a situation that's a public safety issue, in other words, a severe pothole, the city's public works department has gone out and taken action to repair a pothole. There's just so many of them because the road has deteriorated so badly that it's in dire need of reconstruction.
Well, the question is have we taken any pictures to show her exactly what we're talking about? I think that
Yes.
should be, oh, we have?
Yes.
That's pitiful. I mean, just awful that we cannot get them to go forward with such a small project. I say, you know, you arm some of us with those pictures so that we can maybe share them with some people in the county and ask for some help maybe.
A future action that you may wish to consider is a resolution requesting the county commission to proceed with funding this project. In my opinion, it benefits county residents. It benefits the Candlelight residents, which are county residents as well. It's a project that deserves funding, and indeed, it's on the verge of becoming a real public safety issue. I'm sure that our respective chiefs are fully aware of this situation, and accessibility by fire apparatus and police vehicles at one point becomes impeded with a severely deteriorated roadway. It deserves to be funded, and we may want to wish to consider a resolution to that effect.
Put that on our next agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to see that done along with photographs to accompany the resolution.
We will do that.
All right.
Well, if we look at it as a whole, then if we look at the hike and bike, which, you know, I think right away we've you know, mentioned about the safety issue, and that's 30. The street improvements at 350, the Queener, our portion 18, the rest being provided. Also that water main in Harbor Isles at 160. You know, we're talking about over $500,000 in expenditures, about $560,000 there. I just go back to, you know, when we had looked at projects and the Fred Fox and so forth, that, you know, some of the estimated amounts, and I guess my point is that without any of this federal money that may or may not come, you know, what expectations we have for the waterfront overlay district when we talk about parking, et cetera. You know, I think any of us would agree in looking at these particulars, which fall into our city, being the 30, the 350, the 160, that regard these very specific upgrades and that they do need to happen. One, certainly a safety issue at this point that we really want to work as quick as possible. But in looking back at Fred Fox and looking at the overall picture, you know, redevelopment of the city's waterfront park, we talked about that already. I think we had a few meetings before that was totally shut down, and we remain with the same thing that we've had. Poor restroom facilities, et cetera. And we talked about a playground. You folks remember a playground we talked about?
Well,
That was quite a long time ago.
I have something I need to talk
And that's
about.
kind of seems like come and gone. Dredging of the man-made canals. Remember now the city has spent over $1 million at 5 different engineers. That portion here looks to be, $6 million. And again, just a guesstimate because, we've said already that $6 million is going to be a lot less based on maybe some new technology. And the waterfront development district itself at a $3.5 million there. We're talking about $12 million that, whether any of that comes available, and I realize this is early and I'm not trying to downshoot this whole process, but I guess what I'm saying is, even in regards to the letter I received from Mr. Lee that you all had read, and looking at, these expenditures versus looking at an overlay district that I think has been talked about almost as long as I've been sitting here, almost a decade. There's only a few things over there, and that hasn't really changed. We're still talking about parking, but I think it's a good thing in that, in looking at these expenditures and what we're talking about, that these are real. These lay before us in projects that I'm glad you bring forward because these have to be done. And I'm not saying that we put aside the others, but again, it's interesting to look at the difference in monies, and its availability, and what we currently have that feeds the small city and taking care of these particulars. So, again, I'd like to see that extension. I think we all would as soon as possible. I wish it could have come sooner because we've got 4th of July before us. And as noted, it's gotten bigger and bigger. When I was here years ago, the mall used to put them on, and you'd see them from everywhere. And there'd be thousands of people along US 19. Well, now that's not the case. And Port Richey puts them on. Newport Richey puts them on. Or people go elsewhere. So, there's a lot of folks bringing their kids to see these fireworks. And, safety is key over there. So, anyway.
It is almost always a matter of money and where to get the resources to do the
Here's
projects
where
you have in
my
mind.
matters of money differences, and I know I kind of rattled on a little bit, but it's interesting to look at because we had one discussion before, and yet we have another one now, and we can actually, it's nice to be able to see these. I mean, these are upgrades. These are things that are currently working.
Nancy?
I just wanted to bring something up that I was thinking about the other day and see if it wouldn't be an opportunity to jumpstart the park, waterfront park, and I'd like everyone's input on this project. There's a young man, and I know that we talked about a handicapped playground a year and a half ago or whatever, which I would like to call the Miss Coolidge Playground. And but anyway, there was a young man that is probably all of 10 years old, Ryan Benjamin's son. I'm not sure. Do you remember, Mr. O'Neill, what his first name is? Ryan Benjamin's son's first name was?
Aiden.
Aiden. Young man who saved money. He was saving money for a computer and had a friend at school that was in a wheelchair. And this little friend could never play with anybody. Nobody paid attention to him. And so when the time came for Aiden to have enough money for his computer, Aiden was made a decision that he didn't want to buy a computer, that he wanted to use the money that he had saved for the computer to buy a swing to put on the playground at his school so that his friend could find out what it was like to swing on a swing. So there was a presentation done at the Newport Richey Rotary, and he needed $3,500. The Newport Richey Rotary gave him the $3,500, and also the Rotarians that day gave him another $700. Kudos to him. What a wonderful, warm-hearted story of a young man that I'm sure all of us would like to get to know more of him and others like him. And so at the time, I sat there and I thought about this, and I thought, we wanted to do the same thing here. So I approached some people that had talked to me in the past about the opportunity to get involved. One was the sheriff's department. So the sheriff was, they still have some interest in getting, giving us some help with this project. So I would like us to do a fundraising project. I've said in the past that I would head it up and see if we cannot find out what it's going to involve. And this is up to the council, how you want to go about doing it. What it's going to involve for us to more or less put that playground where we had designed it in the park initially, and at least get that playground started for these kids, because time's a wasting. So I want us to sit down and discuss that. It doesn't have to be tonight. You can think about it. But I don't even know what the cost would be. So there's a whole lot involved as to, what size playground we had envisioned, what percentage of it would be for kids of handicap. Did we have, I don't recall if we had two separate playgrounds or a section of that playground that was going to be for handicapped, another section for children that are non-handicapped children. So those are some of the things that I guess we have to almost look at. Maybe at the next meeting we can bring that drawing back out again, look at it, and see if at least we can't get that part of the playground done, and see what it would entail and how much money is involved. Because I think if we go forward with these plans, at least to get that done, I think we're going to see a lot of community effort. It's a much needed program. And according to, I guess the school board now is looking into actually funding swing sets for children at the schools in wheelchairs at each and every school in the county at this point, just because of what this young man has done. So that's tremendous. And I would like to see the city of Port Richey take the first step in a public park in the county of Pasco, in order to not only at school, but now if we have something here, then the parents can enjoy that time with their children.
So it seems to me the first objective is to get a cost estimate.
And
then look at where we can do fundraising or contributions from all.
Well, I think the first thing would be, the city of Port Richey has a park. In that park we designed the thought of having a playground for handicapped children. We start out with a letter, just letting people know what we'd like to do, and see what agencies would want to jump in. You may have, different agencies that want to get involved. I don't know.
All right. Anything else?
I think it's a good idea. I just can't recall what the figures were. We had someone come in and actually illustrate, a playground. That there may have even been an estimate for that.
I
at that
think there
time.
was some very broad estimates in the master plan itself, the park master plan, as I recall.
And I know that some time back there was a considerable amount of work done by Ms. Coolidge.
Right.
I spoke with her on multiple occasions about this. Also, I spoke with former Mayor Rich Rover. As I understood it, there were donors lined up that were ready to contribute a good portion of the funding to construct the playground. I could, if you so desire, I could get out that material listed on an upcoming agenda.
I would appreciate that,
Yeah.
because I think we need
In
to go
fact,
forward.
we may want to put this on a CRA agenda, which we could hold a CRA meeting 2 weeks from now, if that sounds good to you.
Yes, that's great.
You could have a council meeting and then a CRA meeting.
Yeah, works fine.
Yeah, I just think that getting this project done would be good for the community, good for the children, and also an opportunity to pay attention to, okay, here's our first step to turning that whole area around, and giving these kids an opportunity to play. And I mean, can you imagine? I mean, I can remember when I first went on a swing, I was so excited I couldn't stand myself, and I was on swings year in and year out, and that feeling that you get in your belly is wonderful. You know, I think these kids need to feel that feeling in their belly.
All right, anybody from the public wishing to address us? Yes?
Sandra Spaldi, 82070 Post Road, Port Richey. Hello. I'd like to address two things. One, the park. If my memory serves me right. Now, I don't know if it was before the plan actually went in or just talking. They wanted to put the playground where I live on that side. I argued it's too close to the street.
I think it moved.
But I argued it was too close to the street for the children. They could run out and get hurt. I want you all to know that park is used. It is loved. Maybe it needs a little bit of work, but where everybody thinks it needs a whole new look, it's wrong. People enjoy going. Maybe we need new ladies' room and men's room there, yes. But you don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. People enjoy it. They play ball there, they do all that. That's what a park's about. That's the first thing. I'll leave that with you. Second thing is the sidewalks for the bike and hike. Yes, because I don't think our city workers can goof that bike and hike up any worse than what we did the first time. Okay? I think that's a great idea. And maybe in the future, we could bring that all the way up and have a real bike and hike. That when the plans are shown, that's what comes out of it. I'll leave you all with that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, seeing nothing, is there any further discussion? You have anything else you need, Tom?
Well, just recapping my notes, I'm to draft a resolution for your consideration on Orange Grove Avenue at the next meeting, and schedule a discussion on the universally accessible playground at the next meeting, which would be 2 weeks.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
now that I think of it, I would like to see one other item on that agenda. We need to start talking about parking. And I know Gildog had the event here a few weeks back, and there was a lot of discussion during that event. And a lot of people, along with myself, I think the mayor, most of us realize if we don't get parking down there, we're not going to have growth. So I think we should have at least some discussion during that CRA meeting about that as well.
Okay.
It's time to move forward on that. We may not be able to move forward like we want, but I think it's time to start looking at some ideas, some plans to move ahead on that, because if we don't get that in there, I don't see the growth that we have either in the plans or in our own minds, so.
And Tom, you have been working on that too, haven't you?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, just to say.
All right, if there's nothing further, then we stand adjourned.